No, I didn't, but I can start doing that right now. Why don't you guys come up just a little closer? We'll get warmer the closer we get. And then luckily we're not outside, because yesterday when I was teaching outside in this heat, we had gnats that we had to do. So if you guys want to get warmed up, you can do the gnat dance and sort of swat things away from your face. And before I forget, I want you guys to all take home packets of seeds that I have up here too. So let's start by showing you a few pictures, first of all. So I've been to some of your schools: Wickham, Horn, Kirkwood. Where do you go again? I forget. Did you say Wickham? And I was at West Liberty 2 years ago, but I've not been to the junior high there, so probably I might be able to see you next year. And then you're homeschooled, so I'm not going to see you. But I did go to the homeschool program at Roosevelt this year. There's a homeschool program, you know, at the old Roosevelt Elementary School. You know about that? Okay. Do you? Okay, so my name is Scott, and I have the best job in the whole world. I get to go around to all your schools and teach you guys about growing food, and not just growing food and eating food, but what we do when we have a little bit of food that's left over, like this banana peel that I just had for breakfast this morning, and instead of throwing it in the garbage, we're going to make soil with it. Okay, so it's not just the eating of food, it's what we do if we have leftover food in a big cycle. And that's what I get to do with all of you guys at school. And so I know that the theme of this summer is dig into reading. And so we are going to actually dig into soil literally today, which is so exciting. This is my favorite thing to talk about in the whole world. I promise I'll make it fun for you guys, because I've got a lot of fun stuff to show you that you can come up and see in just a minute. So let me start by showing you a few cool slides. How many of you guys have been downtown at the Iowa City Public Library, which I hope to be able to get something going here at the Coralville Public Library too. But the Iowa City Public Library, oh, and by the way, I'm the Education Outreach Coordinator for New Pioneer Food Co-op. I don't know if you guys have been to one of our stores right here in Coralville. We have another one in Iowa City. And I have a program called Soil Mates, which I started after the Peace Corps when I started teaching people how to grow food. And I get to take it now to all the public schools. And so I want to show you downtown. Oh, this went to sleep again. There we go. Okay, so if you guys have ever been downtown, you will have seen the garden. Come on in, guys. Come on in, sit down. We have a vegetable garden that we started with Children's Day at Arts Fest a couple of years ago, and we grow food downtown. This was sweet corn. We had melons and squash. But I'll tell you something right now. I can't grow this year sweet corn down there, because when the sweet corn gets this tall and the wind comes through the pedmaw, all that corn got knocked down 5 times in storms. So I can't put tall stuff down there unless I have a windbreak anymore. So now the stuff I'm doing this year is going to be more stuff that's low to the ground. Like, we call them root crops, like potatoes, carrots, onions, beets, things that are in the ground growing, but they don't get up very tall. So it's sad that I can't grow sweet corn down there anymore, but I do get to talk. This is what I live for, you guys. These kids are a little younger than you, but when I want you to look in the faces of these kids right here and just let you know that I would do this job for free because of the expression on kids' faces, younger than you even, when they listen to me and understand how important it is to learn where food comes from and how we can do it right here in Coralville at the library. And so, like I say, I just have the best job in the world. That's the cutest little boy in the whole world I've ever seen. I always have to put that slide up. And that's that garden outside again at the library. This is at Hoover School. None of you guys are from Hoover, but we have an incredible school garden going at Hoover Elementary that I'm going to show you when we get done. Well, I'm going to go through some of this, and you guys can follow along with me, but I'm going to draw you a little picture of what we have growing at the Hoover Garden. And this was me talking to these kids before spring break. And I want to show you back here behind me, there's a pallet corral, which is very similar to what I have right here. And this is what we're doing at schools when we take food waste out of the cafeteria, and instead of tossing it in the garbage, we're taking food waste out of your cafeterias and kitchens at school and actually making compost at school. You guys, I do this every day of my life. And I never, ever get tired of seeing the magic. It is magic to see all that right there. That a lot of people think is just garbage. And to see that right there turn into this. You guys, that is absolute magic. That is what plants need to eat. This has to happen first before we can get any food in our tummies. I call compost food for the food. And when the roots of a plant, which I'm going to talk about more in just a minute, but I just want to let you know where we're going to be going. When the roots touch that, that is what has to happen first before any of us can eat any food. And it's so important to understand that connection. And when you guys make compost, you understand that connection. You understand how important it is to make that turn into this. It is so cool, and I just want you to really, really, you guys are in 5th and 6th grade, and so you're going to be studying some of the science that I'm going to talk about in a minute that is so important to understanding before we can eat any food. So these guys at Hoover are already studying some of this, and this was at Prairie Middle School last year in Cedar Rapids, where I've got the bucket that's over there full of these red wiggler worms that I'm going to show you guys in a minute that eat all that old food and help make the soil too. These little red wigglers that I have in the bucket, we're going to take a peek at later, and it's so easy. You guys can do this in a science class. You can take a bucket, put it inside another bucket. You put holes in the bottom of this bucket so that the water from the food will drip down into the bottom. And it creates what's called a compost tea in the bottom, which is a plant. You can use that as a plant fertilizer too. The only thing that's different between this system here and this system is that I put these little worms in there that I'm going to show you a little bit later. And it's so cool and easy to do. You can do it at home, school, wherever. And this was at Kirkwood, by the way. This was at Kirkwood Elementary's garden, which is a great school garden. You guys have one of the best school gardens at Kirkwood Elementary in the entire district. I mean, I'm working with some great kids, and you guys are at the top of the heap, let me tell you. And this is just 2 weeks ago downtown, outside the library of the Children's, for Children's Day at Arts Fest, and we were just putting in the garden downtown. This is Vivian, my friend Vivian, who's helping me plant some seeds. And I hope you guys get a chance to come downtown and take a peek at what we did that day. This is just a couple weeks ago, but if you went down there today, you would see all kinds of vegetables growing, not just in this bed, but there's another bed over here. There's 2 of them. You know, the fountain, the kids play in the fountain over here, and there's the play area, and we've got all kinds of vegetables in both beds now just in 2 weeks, it's already gone from that to like this. So it's pretty cool. I don't know if we have the space, Erica. We're going to have to take a peek out here, because I would love to be able to get a vegetable garden going here by the library. I think we probably have the space. I can find space. We'll put it on the roof if we have to. Okay, so I have to advance through a couple slides here because I want to show you real quick. This is some kids that in fact, I was just at West High School yesterday. This is the same principle of these pallets going on at school, where we're taking food waste out, putting it into the pallet corrals. This was a trial we did at West High School last year that we're trying to revive with kitchen waste, not cafeteria stuff, but stuff in the kitchen that's going out to the school garden. And this was at Horace Mann, at a farmer fair we did at Horace Mann Elementary, where we're just educating kids again about what it means to take all this stuff that people think is garbage right there and turning it into organic matter, which is for soil. So I am going to go ahead and back up, and let's just leave it. Let's leave it at this one right here, because I want to talk about what's on my list here, you guys. First of all, I have 2 rules in my class, okay? Very easy rules. First one is you cannot call soil dirt, okay? In my hand right here, I have soil. It's not dirt. That first rule is because if I walk up to you right now and I say, is it okay if I treat you like dirt for the next half hour or so? No. It's so mean for me to say that I would treat any of you guys like that. I don't expect you guys to treat yourself with words like that. I want you to respect each other and respect what's in my hand here. And let me tell you why it's that important. And if there's only one thing you remember from the rest of the time I'm talking, it should be this. If we don't take care of this, and when I say take care of soil, I mean very specifically a few things. Because if you look under a microscope, if we put this under a really good microscope, you guys would see all kinds of life in this soil that you can't see with your eye. They're called microbes that you may have already started to study in biology. And in fact, if you haven't seen this article yet, I just showed the adults here. You should go to the New York Times a few weeks ago and see an article that was just written called The Hidden World Beneath Our Feet. In the soil, you guys, is all kinds of life, living, breathing life, that sometimes we treat like dirt and we disrespect it. And you guys, I just want you to understand that if we don't take care of this, then we're not going to be here today. And I'll tell you why. Because when you take care of soil, it means three things. You don't pollute it. I want you guys to remember that there are things that you can put in your tummy to hurt your tummy and make you sick. Well, guess what? There are all kinds of things, too, that we can put in this to make this sick, too. So let's not do that, okay? Let's make our tummies healthy. Let's make our soil healthy. There's all kinds of similarities between plants and people in terms of what we need, air and water especially. The second thing I want you to think about with taking care of soil is make it balanced. What do I mean by that? Well, when you guys go to the doctor and the doctor takes a blood test from you guys and you sit down in the office and he says, okay, let's take a look at your test results. I took a look at your blood and guess what? We got to make some changes. Your cholesterol's a little high, your glucose is a little off, you need some iron. You know, there are things that you can adjust in your diet to make you healthier and balanced. Just like there are things, when I take soil to a lab and they test it in the lab, they will come back with a test result and they'll say, this is what you have to change to make your soil balanced. You have to change this up, this down, okay? So the third thing is, you want to make this in my hand as biologically active as possible. So all those little critters I was talking about that's in the microscope, that's in the soil, when you're making compost, you're helping get all those critters up in the soil to make the soil healthier, okay? And we'll talk about how those, when I talk about the soil food web, we're going to talk about what's happening to make those nutrients available to the plants. But we can't have them ready and available until we actually help make them. And we're helping make them even stronger when we're making compost, okay? So it's so simple to do, but you guys, it's so important to do because number one, take care of soil. Or we don't have plants, number two. If we don't have plants, number two, guess what? We don't have food, and who knows what plants give us besides just food? I'll give you a hint. What did I just put? Air, exactly. The plants are giving us oxygen and food. And then 4 means we're here today talking about this. But if we don't back up this conversation 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps to the first step of soil first, which is my whole message here, soil first, then plants, then food, then us, we're not going to be here today, you guys, talking about this. And by the way, what do you think the animals eat? You know, if all you guys did was eat meat, and I hope that's not the case because you wouldn't have a balanced diet, but let's just say that's all you ate. Well, guess what? The animals had to eat plants too. All the hamburger that we eat, those cows are munching on grains and grasses that were plants too. And so if it's a person or an animal, it all starts with soil, plants, food, us, okay? That's the progression that I want you guys to really honor, okay? But let's remember a couple things first. And this is the review part because every class starts with review and then we renew, and I'm going to push you guys a little bit, but this is the easy part because I know you guys all know this, but let's review it, okay? And that's part of being a lifelong learner. Coming up, waking up every day knowing some stuff, but also being humble enough to admit that you don't know a lot, and I don't know a lot, and I'm just going to keep digging and digging and digging for the rest of my life to learn more, okay? So let's remember that the seeds that I have for you guys to take home are these little tiny lettuce seeds, okay? They're really tiny. They're so tiny you can barely even see them in my hand, okay? Each one of those little dots turns into a piece of, or a head of lettuce. Some seeds are so tiny, you're not even going to believe this, but I have a seed packet here from oregano, which is a nice spice to put on our spaghetti sauce, etc. I have in this packet within a packet these tiny, tiny little seeds. that are so tiny that I need to get my glasses on to see them. They're like little tiny specks that you could throw in the air, and they're so light they would float like dust. You can barely even see these. They're seeds. But guess what? Remember that that's a seed too. A coconut is a seed. It's one of the world's largest seeds. A potato is a seed. If I throw a potato in the ground and cover it up with soil, it starts to sprout 15 other different potatoes underground. Okay? So every seed produces more seeds. So I don't care if it's this big old seed here or the tiny little seed that I can barely see, they all still need, in balance, the same 4 things. Let's remember what those are: the sun, the soil, the air, and the water. And remember, you guys, the Goldilocks rule, okay? If not too hot, not too cold, but just right. If it's too hot outside or too cold outside, those little seeds will not germinate into plants. If it's too wet outside or too dry outside, same thing. It has to be just right, balance, okay? I don't care if it's outside in nature for plants and seeds and critters or in your tummy. If you guys only ate your favorite food for breakfast, what if, let's say all of us loved macaroni and cheese. I think most of us like macaroni and cheese, but if you don't, let's just pretend we do. If I only ate that for breakfast and then for lunch and then for dinner, and I went to bed and I woke up and all I had was macaroni and cheese and macaroni. Even though I like it, it's great, it's my favorite food. You know what? If that's all I introduce in my tummy for balance, I'm gonna get sick pretty quick. So you guys all know that you have to put the 5 food groups in your tummy to be healthy: the vegetables, the grains, the fruit, the protein, the dairy products, wherever you're getting those from, you've got to introduce your tummy to balance too, to be healthy, okay? So, inside or outside? Because you guys, it's all about choices. You know, I had a very simple choice this morning when I ate breakfast. I ate my banana, I got done with my banana, and I had a choice, and I said, you know what? I am not going to put that here in the trash. I am going to put that here in the compost and make soil. You guys, it's such a simple, simple thing. It's a tiny, tiny little thing. But you know what? If all of us did one little tiny thing, at the end of the day, that adds up to one big thing. So if we all just pitch in and do little stuff, you guys, it adds up to big deals. And so it's all about the choices you make to what you're going to put in your body to make you healthy, or what we're going to put in the soil to make it. You know, there are things we can do to hurt it or help it. And all I'm suggesting today to you guys, as you continue to study through school, is let's figure out how we can help this stuff instead of hurt this stuff, okay? How many of you guys have heard of immunities? Have you ever heard? Let's talk about the doctor's visit again. If you go to the doctor and you get your blood balanced and your diet balanced, I talk about the top 5 things that you need to do to stay one step ahead, hopefully, of getting sick. It's have a balanced diet, drink enough water, get enough sleep, get some exercise, and think positive. And if you do those things, your body has a natural thing called an immunity response that makes your proteins stronger to resist getting sick. So when you are introduced to different pathogenic imbalances, again, there's that word balance again. It's all about balance. Then you will not get sick as often. The same thing is happening with these plants, you guys. If I treat the soil right, then this plant right here, which by the way, everybody can tell is a tomato plant probably, then this tomato plant, if I treat the soil right, it also has an immune system in it to help it from getting sick, be it from critters that are flying around airborne or critters that are soil-borne in that cycle of life. You know, so it's all about choices and immunities. And so let's define our terms here, because if you guys have ever done this in school, it's really fun to see what soil is. I already said it's not dirt. And by the way, I want to tell you, I don't just do these soil mates classes to talk about growing carrots and compost. It's about all kinds of life skills that you guys are going to take with you your whole life. We've already learned about respect and balance. We're going to learn about patience, nurturance, resilience, choices, all these important things that you guys are going to have to take with you for your whole life. You can learn right in the garden by taking care. I don't care if it's a baby brother or a puppy or a plant. When you guys learn how to take care of things like that, you take care of yourself, you take care of your community. So when you shake this soil up in a jar and top it off with water and let it sit, And by the way, you got to poke a hole in the top so it can breathe. Remember, oxygen has to flow up here or we can't live. Guess what? Oxygen has to flow in the soil for the soil to live too. And when you let it sit, it will separate into 3 main parts. At the very bottom, you'll see sand. When you get up close, when I'm done talking, you're going to be able to see the sand particles in the bottom. That's the heaviest part of soil. The lightest part of soil is clay, and it floats to the top in layer after layer of clay. So soil is almost half sand and half clay. But the very important part that we're going to focus on today is that middle part of the jar where we have this thin belt of what's called organic matter. And that basically is old plants. It could be fruit or vegetables or grasses, whatever. Old plants that break down and shrink and break down and shrink in the name of chemistry. They decompose and they go from that form to this form. And all of that compost that I'm making basically is that center part of the soil jar, which is the organic matter belt. And if you guys like science, and I hope you do, and if you don't, I hope to be able to convince you how important this is for science. I have in this jar right here the 3 main sciences all in a jar. Physics, biology, and chemistry, all cranking in here. And I'm going to go through each one of them real quick because I want you to understand how important science is to what soil is. And I don't have a brick wall behind me, but let's pretend that the wall back there is bricks. I want you to think of each piece of sand. And by the way, so when we talk about the physics of soil, we're going to talk about the sand. Because each piece of sand piled on top of another piece of sand, just like a brick in a wall, is going to allow all kinds of air and water to flow through the soil. So that's what sand particles give us the ability in soil for the soil to breathe and hydrate as it's infused through the soil. The chemistry of the soil is really cool. How many of you guys have ever seen the periodic table of the elements? You guys have already, it's awesome. You guys have already seen that in 5th and 6th grade. Because we didn't have that when I was that young. And if you go to the chemistry building, by the way, at the University of Iowa, I was just there yesterday. You can walk in the first floor of the chemistry building, and they have a big display of all of the elements. Most of them are minerals. And they're all in little boxes, okay? All of those elements on that chart have a very specific combination of positive charges and negative charges. Okay, you guys know that if you've already seen this then. And I want you to understand that clay, right here, the surface area of clay has largely a negative charge. So if I have a negative charge and you are a positive charge, then you're drawn to the clay and the soil holds onto that nutrient. And then just like a sponge or a door opening and closing, it lets go of it when the time is right to let go of it so that the roots can absorb it and bring it up, okay? So the next time you look at the soil, it's very easy to think about it like a sponge. Soil both holds on to nutrients and lets go of nutrients when the time is right to let go, okay? And so if you like chemistry, boy, you are going to study an incredible amount about chemistry of soil when you study this. If you guys get a chance to look under a really good microscope sometime in school and see that living life that's in there and to see where the root meets the soil, to see that door opening and closing, to have all those critters flowing back and forth between where the root and the soil meets, where the water is like the carrier, and there's little water molecules that deliver those things from the root and the soil back and forth. And it's just so cool to see, you guys. It's a living, breathing world beneath our feet that we just have barely started researching. And so there's so much more to know. That's why we have to respect it, because too many times things are gone and extinct before we even had a chance to discover them. That is really sad. That makes me very sad, you guys, to know that some stuff is already gone and we didn't even have a chance to say hi and get to know it. You know, that's just really sad. So let's just really start thinking about these things. The last part of science that I want to focus on in this jar is the biology. And that, like I say, are all these little critters called microbes that are in the soil that we cannot see, and they are munching away and eating all of the old food. I don't care if it's the worms I have in the bucket, or those little tiny microbes that are doing that too. All of those little critters are munching away at all that organic matter to help produce all of the available nutrients for this plant. And I just used a word I want to focus on for a minute, available. Here's another chemistry word that you guys are going to learn later in school. If I take this plant out of the pot right here, and I just lay it down on top of the compost pile and walk away, it's not going to live that long, okay? It'll live for a little while, but the nutrients that this plant needs are not available yet to this plant. So when you guys study chemistry, you're going to study that this is potential energy for this plant. It will turn into kinetic available energy when it decomposes and shrinks and shrinks and shrinks and turns into all that stuff that I have in that jar. Now it's available and ready and useful for this plant. And that's a really important thing you guys are going to learn in chemistry too. So thank you so much for letting me talk about the science of this stuff, because it's so important to understand how scientific this is. And I want to talk real quick too about these roots real quick again. If you get a chance to look at the roots really close up, and by the way, this plant is screaming at me to get out of this little pot and into the ground. But these roots get all bound up and they want to dive deep. Roots go deep to grab water and trace minerals and all kinds of things. And the next time you look at roots, because you guys, most of the time when we look at plants, we only look at it from this side up, right? Let's pretend that we're going to shift our focus and get underground and pretend what it's like to be this close to a root and to see what's happening there. Because when you look at roots under a microscope, you literally are going to see, like I say, I can only describe it in terms of a door that opens and closes. If we don't have the right combination to the door or the right key, if it's locked, we can't get in. And guess what? If I don't have the right chemical combination happening here, I don't care if it's in a plant or in my brain. Here's another analogy for you guys. If you guys don't have the right proper balance of chemicals firing in your brain, this is why I call the roots of a plant the brains of the plant, then information cannot flow. I don't care if it's information flowing up here in your noggin or information flowing here underground with the roots. If you guys don't have that door opening and closing properly up here or here, then the information can't flow and the plant suffers because of it, and then you suffer and you get sick. It's very, very connected. I learn so much about myself when I study plants and soil. It's so connected, you guys. Everything is connected. And so thanks for indulging me on that science stuff, because it's really important to understand that science. And then the last thing I want to talk about before I move on to the actual recipe of what's going on here is this whole idea I mentioned before about the soil food web. One of my favorite scientists is a woman by the name of Dr. Elaine Ingham, and she's the chief scientist now at the Rodale Institute, and she taught me a lot about diversity. Remember I was telling you about how it's important to have that balance in your diet or in ecosystems. There's a real important connection between diversity in a system and balance in that system. And the Rodale Institute taught me a lot about that. But Dr. Ingham has this great philosophy called the soil food web. And what she talks about is, and I'm sure you guys have already studied this in school, where you've got photosynthesis occurring with solar energy combining with carbon dioxide and water molecules in the atmosphere to help go into the foliar tissue of this plant that flows up and down this tissue and produces a really important chemical called glucose. And that's kind of like a sugar. It basically is a sugar. And when that glucose flows through the plant, through photosynthesis, it exits like little secretions at the end of these root hairs. These are called root hairs. And when sugar comes off the end of this, it's a really attractive food source for all those little critters I was telling you about in the microscope. And they come swimming towards the root and start gobbling up and eating all that food right there in the soil. And when they get done doing their eating, they have produced, in a beautiful loop, the nutrients that are now available to be taken right back up into the plant, just like a straw. A great way to look at a root is to think about it like a straw. So as we suck on a straw, guess what? The root is sucking on the soil and bringing up into the plant all those nutrients that the critters have helped make all the way from top to bottom. Everything's connected, like I say, you guys. It starts with the solar energy up here, and it goes all the way through the plant into the roots, and then gets cycled right back through again. And you guys are going to continue to study all kinds of lessons about cycles and science. Yes?
I think that's really interesting because that's something I didn't think about that it, you hear that they need the sun to create the food, and you've heard that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sun, you need water, and all of that. But I never thought about it, why or how. Like, it's not eating, like the leaves aren't eating.
Yeah.
That I never knew that it was, I never knew that it was sugar going down.
Yeah, it's glucose flowing through.
Coming up, but you never think about what goes down. Did you know that? Did you know that that's how it works?
Well, and like if it rains.
Am I the only one?
And you guys, all these plants need water too, right? Yeah. So we can either get water through the rain, or we can water it with the sprinkler. But the water doesn't just come through the absorption of the leaves if it's raining. It's, of course, getting sucked into the soil, and the soil is holding, like that sponge, all those water molecules like a sponge. And you guys, last year the sponge went dry. We went through remember the drought? We had 4 weeks at that garden downtown where it was 100 degrees, no rain. I had to water that garden twice a day for 4 weeks because the sponge went dry, and the roots had no access to water molecules. So this year, though, now we just have the opposite effect where the sponge is too full. But I want to tell you some interesting research. If you make compost, this is really important. I want to tell you this because I want you to research the new stuff that comes out all the time. This research was affirmed last summer. There's a group called Practical Farmers of Iowa, in Iowa, obviously, and they said that if you put more compost into your gardens and in your row crop operation, if you have more cover crops, which if I have time, I'll talk about what that means too. But if you put more organic matter, more decomposing organic vegetation back into your soil, you both hold on to water more effectively for getting through drought, but you also hold on to water more effectively in the soil so it doesn't run off into the streets and create all that flooding. So it's a win-win-win, you guys. When you make compost, it's good for the soil, the plants, us, so we don't get flooded out of our homes. And so I just thought I'd mention how important that research is. And I'm just so thankful that people are doing this research. Let's talk about this recipe going on here, you guys. Just like when you bake a cake or make cookies or whatever, you just got to follow the recipe. And it's very simple. Compost is not rocket science, it's soil science. It's so easy, you guys. It's ridiculous. 2 things, greens and browns. Well, actually 3 things, but that's frosting on the cake, and I'll get to that in a minute. Greens and browns. Now, when I say green, I do not mean just stuff that's the color green, like this old zucchini, okay? I'm talking about this little guy that just rolled away here, this old nectarine. But I'm talking about, not just stuff that's green, like this old basil. Basically, when I say greens, I mean any old plant or vegetable is only 30% of this pile, okay? So when I add 70 to 30, I get 100. So 70% of this pile is browns. And when I say brown, I don't just mean the color brown either, like these old leaves or straw. You can take shredded up newspaper, and this is a perfect brown source. You can take the paper towels that I just dried my hand off in the bathroom, put that in there. Basically, you want to find, and by the way, when you study that periodic table of elements we were talking about, when you look at that chart, the greens in here are primarily your nitrogen source, and your browns are primarily your carbon source. And so it's a very specific ratio of greens to browns or nitrogen to carbon. Okay? You mix all that up with a pitchfork. And by the way, if I kept this here overnight, you guys, and you came back in the morning and put your hand in it, it would not only have shrunk down already noticeably, because as organic matter is decomposing, it's shrinking, but it also releases heat energy. So it would already be warm to the touch as it's releasing heat. So if I go in and mix it up every couple weeks with my pitchfork, get it turned, then it will start turning into what I've got here in the bucket. This is what I'm making at home. And I just love making compost. It's so easy. The third part of the recipe is this fun part that I'm not going to get my hands all full of this yet, but in a few minutes when I'm done talking, we're going to come through here and you're going to get a nice close-up of what I've got going on here. It's like I say, I've got the same combination in this bucket of greens and browns. There's, of course, my browns. I even have an old coffee filter here, okay, from coffee this morning. That can go in the bucket. The greens go in there. The only thing that you guys are going to be able to see, and this is my funnest part to bring because they're so fun. You guys, I'm not going to have you guys make this promise with me because you're older, but with the real young kids, I actually make the younger kids make a promise with me. We put our hands over our heart. Well, let's do it. Put your hand over your heart. Say it with me. Say, I promise, that when I see a ladybug, or a butterfly, or a worm, that I won't hurt them, but I will help them back to the garden. You can put your hands down. Thank you for letting me have you do that promise that I only usually do for the younger kids, but you guys, I think actually everybody should make that promise. So we'll get a chance to look at these fun red wigglers. You know, when you guys see after a rain, the earthworms come out, those are red worms too, but this is a very specific kind of red worm species called Acenia fotida that we're going to take a peek at that is the preferred worm for munching away at all this organic matter to help create the available nutrients. It's nature's perfect fertilizer. That's what's cool, you guys. You know what? I don't have to go out and buy fertilizer. I can grow my own nutrients. I can grow my own fertilizer. It's really, you know, nature is giving us this free gift. And we too often don't take what we have right in front of us for free and just recycle it right back into the system. Okay, and I want to show you this statistic right here on this chart that's really important. I have that garbage can here as a prop just to make this point. More than half, you guys look at this garbage can right here. Let's go up to more than half of this garbage can, which would be about right here. Some people say 75% of this garbage can, every day of what we throw in there, paper, like mainly paper waste and a lot of food waste in a typical garbage can, could be used for compost. You guys, that is a really stunning statistic, that over half of what we throw away every day on this chart, I've got organics and paper. This is from the city landfill. I work with Jennifer Jordan a lot at the recycling center. And when we present this statistic to people, you guys, it really, really is convincing that this is important stuff. This is really important stuff. We're wasting plant food by burying our resource instead of using it to make it turn into compost. And the other thing that happens remember I talked about the heat here? The other thing that's happening when we put this in the garbage at the landfill, when it gets shipped off by the dumpster load, it just sits there and it gets buried and it creates a gas called methane, which is not an evil gas. It's just a naturally occurring gas called methane. But when it sits in the landfill like that, because some landfills have the capacity to pump it out and use it as an energy source, but we don't have that, we can't do that here. So what it does though is it just creates more atmospheric greenhouse gas heat that's trapped in the atmosphere if we just keep it trapped in the landfill. And this isn't a climate change seminar, but we don't need any more of that heat right now. And let's just say that instead of making that heat, that methane gas that's trapped, let's go ahead and make compost instead. That's all I'm saying. It seems like a really obvious thing. When I go up to Cedar Rapids, I teach up there, and I always drive past Mount Trashmore. I don't know if you guys have ever seen this place, but it's the landfill. The Lynn County Solid Waste Agency is off the highway. And when you look to the right side of 380, you will see a mountain that literally is a mountain. It's like when I was a little kid, it was like a little bunny hill. Now it's a ski resort. And I want you to close your eyes and imagine the potential of half of that mountain being turned over and used for plant food. That's pretty interesting. And so that's another theme I want you to think about is potential. You know, we have the potential to grow a lot of food here that we're not growing here and make a lot of plant food that we're not making here. And you guys, I don't care if it's at your school, your home, wherever, right here in town, I would encourage you again to close your eyes and just kind of imagine all these spots all over town where we've got all this open space. And when I see open space, as much as I love football and always will, I also love foodball. And I want to see a football field right next to it, have a foodball field, and turn it into food. You guys, 1 acre of land is a football field. And I can grow enough food for not just your families, but dozens and dozens and dozens of more families with just 1 football field of food. So we have the potential here again. That's the theme I like, potential energy, to really create a lot more of those gardens I showed you and compost operations. And that's the whole theme of my teaching, is to try to incorporate both what happens when we eat it and what happens when we're done eating it into one cycle, one life cycle, okay? So let's see, how are we doing on time? Got a few more minutes. I want to talk about a couple designs that are really fun, you guys. Before we get a chance to come filter up here and look at this stuff, I want to show you, oh, and by the way, when I do this work at schools, if you guys ever want to work with me at school, where we take the food waste out of the cafeteria, we can either get it collected in a bin like this, and then it gets shipped off to Jennifer to the landfill, where she can take it and make compost. Okay, so that's what we call diversion, where we're separating food waste, shipping it off to the landfill to divert the food waste. Or you can convert it. I've got the word divert or convert here. You can actually do it right at school too, depending on the size of your school. You know, of course, the smaller school, the easier it is to do this. But you guys can do this right at school without having to just ship it off either. It's got its challenges, but like I always tell all my classes, if you give me a challenge, you have just motivated me. Okay, I do not give up easy, you guys. I don't expect you to either. Anytime, you guys are going to have challenges thrown at you the rest of your life. Okay, but don't give up. Do not give up. You look at the challenge and you say, okay, how do I figure out how to deal with this and learn something from it and transform it and get stronger because of it? Okay, that's another life skill lesson we just learned right there. You know, I don't expect us all to not make mistakes anymore. We're all going to make mistakes. It's whether or not you learn from it that's the most important part, okay? So I want to show you real quick this great design that we're doing at Hoover that I call the sun spiral. So it's a garden that, let's just imagine this is our garden. And let's imagine that half of this room is that size, okay? So half of this room would be a typical school garden. Now, teachers, help remind me, where is east? Every time I get into a new room, is it that way? I always get mixed up and I'm not sure. Yeah, you're right, that's east. Okay, thank you. I want to make sure. So that's, okay. So for the purposes of this, you guys, this right here is going to be east because that is the direction of east. Okay, so when the sun comes up in the morning, remember that you want all your little plants to greet the morning sun, okay? The little tiny plants that need immediate sunlight have to have sunlight with no shade in front of them. So if I'm a little strawberry patch, I don't want tall sweet corn in the east right here. I want to put all my tall plants back here in the west, and I want my small plants in the east as the sun moves across the sky, okay? So we've got east, west, okay? Got our north and south. I'm getting all mixed up here. Now, in this fun sun spiral, I've got 6 different wedges coming off of our garden here. Okay? And how many of you guys have ever heard of something called 3 sisters? You ever heard of 3 sisters? You have? You have too? Okay, I want you to imagine that this center part of our garden right here is a big pitcher's mound, the size of a pitcher's mound, at the top of which is sweet corn, okay? The middle part of the mound is pole beans, green beans, that climb the corn like a natural trellis, and at the base of the pitcher's mound is squash. This is a Native American classic design of ancient wisdom, where all these plants complement one another. They're called companion plants. They give you your protein, your vitamins. And I want to tell you one more quick thing about the research. Will you put your arm out like this? Pretend that my arm is a root and your arm is a root. When we link arms right there, there is all kinds of information that's getting passed between root and root that we have barely understood too. And so when those companion plants are diving underground, touching one another's roots, they're exchanging information too, just like where the soil exchanges information with the root. So I wanted to say that think about the Three Sisters design if you guys are doing a garden at home. And so as the sun comes up in the morning, these two beds here are just going to be, let me get a different color here. These two beds right here are going to be vegetables. Okay? And you can have little tiny mini pathways that walk through these wedges too. But I want you to be able to have a pathway so that no matter where you are in your garden, you can reach over and have a bed that you can reach all the way over. And we're also doing some disabled access beds too, where if a child is in a wheelchair, we want to have them up high, like downtown we've got them up high because those are rocks. But you guys can also take pallets, just like this, and you can stack the pallets up horizontally. And as these pallets are stacked up horizontally, if I'm sitting in a wheelchair, all the slats between the wooden slats on the pallet, you can plant vegetables in between the slats and use a 4x4x4 square bed garden just with pallets, okay? So you should put those in one of these. This other area here is called vining. So you guys know that watermelon, pumpkin, squash, melon, they need to sprawl and spread out. So all the stuff that has to vine is down there too because it's low. It needs immediate morning sunlight. So let's keep rotating through this garden and we'll put all of our flowers over here. You want some of your beds, you guys, just a big patch of flowers to attract all your beneficial insects, your pollinators, the ladybugs and butterflies that you just made a promise to help protect with me. You guys know since you were little kids that you need those pollinators to spread the pollen from flower to flower so that those plants will produce fruit. You got to have flowers around any garden. You also want to have a nice big bed of herbs. I have the oregano down there. I love basil. You can't grow enough basil. Rosemary, thyme, oregano, chives, tarragon, mint, although mint will take over the entire garden. Yeah, what's up, bud? Which one? I love mint too. You can make great tea, great mint tea, but I'm just saying that if you grow mint, make sure that you understand what you're getting into because it will spread like crazy. Okay, we're almost getting to the end of what's in this garden, but back here is all the tall stuff. And I'm talking about sweet corn, cucumbers, peas. Now, why would I put cucumbers and peas in the tall part of the garden? Do you guys know why? Why would I want cucumbers back here in the west? Why wouldn't I put them up there?
Because you get peas from beans, which have peas in them.
Yeah, they have the pods that produce they're like legumes, you're right, the peas are. But I'm talking about why, cucumbers have to climb. That's all I'm saying. We have to have what's called a trellis. Remember I said that the corn can be a trellis for the pole beans to climb? What I have in the garden downtown are sunflowers back here. And guess what the sunflowers become? A natural trellis for all the cucumbers in front of it to climb the sunflowers. That's pretty cool, to have nature take care of nature. And that's what organic education is all about. Working with nature to let nature take care of nature, to let the ladybug eat the aphid, that kind of thing. So that's the tall stuff in back. And then this part right here, you guys, one part of the garden is just for compost and cover crops. And I want you guys to understand that most of my gardens have, and by the way, most of the wind in storms comes in a lot from the northwest. And so we want to have a windbreak back here with fruit and nut trees. Okay, to kind of slow the wind down a little bit. But I want to also have you understand how important it is for this section here. You guys, sometimes I spend the whole first year in a garden not doing any production of food or flowers or herbs. It's just about taking care of the soil first. Remember? And that kind of wraps up my whole message in a nice bow. Soil first. If I don't take care of the soil first, you guys, by that decomposing, that microbial decomposition of organic matter to produce available nutrients for plants and that wonderful life cycle, biological nutrient cycle right there, if I don't take care of that, then I'm not going to have the rest of this garden. And so I want you guys to understand that I will sometimes just really spend a lot of quality time building up the soil, And I want you to understand, we can't build clay and sand. That's geology's gift to us from thousands and millennia. But what we can do is build soil when we build and make compost, because we're building organic matter. What did I say was that middle part of that jar? Organic matter. And when you make compost and you keep putting it, I just talked to Sarah about this before the class started. I know that every time I go back into my garden, when I keep putting my compost back in there year after year and making it all fluffy and beautiful, I am adding biology to my soil and I am making that soil healthier. And so that's why that side is so important. You guys have all heard that quote, "Make this place better than when you got here." That's a famous poster that's probably in your schools. And I want you to know that when you leave, whenever you enter a place, your school, your home, your neighborhood, your church, I want you to ask yourself the question, what can I do to make this place better than when I got here? And I know that when I go to a garden, if I'm making compost, I made that soil better than when I got there. And that's the whole point of this whole talk, is to make that healthy so that we can have the plants healthy, so that we can have the food healthy, so that we can even be here today. So I don't mean to be an alarmist, but it really is that important that we take care of that stuff first, or none of us are going to be on this planet, you guys. It's really that important.
I have a question for you. How many of you have gardens?
Yeah, I should have asked that. That's great.
So if you did this at home, okay, then let me ask you this, because you could have a garden, but you could also, do you live in a house, or who lives in an apartment? Nobody. Oh, one person, two people. So Scott, can you compost if you're in an apartment?
You can compost wherever you are. And I will challenge anybody. Again, here's my challenge. First of all, I want to say this, you guys. I don't expect everybody to garden and compost. I'm not going to preach that. What I am going to say, though, is that you should really try to respect it and support those in your neighborhood who do. So if you don't want to garden, maybe you can help support your farmer's market. Maybe you can help your neighbors, when they have extra produce, you can help do a trade with them. If you don't want to compost at home for whatever reason, you know what's really easy and what I do with some groups? Guess what? Go to your neighbors with a 5-gallon bucket and say, "Hey, will you please collect your vegetable scraps for me? And then I will come by your house on a Saturday morning and pick it up and take it to my house, and I'll do the composting for us." I have a tagline called "Building Community by Building Soil." That's what I'm all about. And so if you're at home, you can do a bucket thing. You guys on a daily basis probably at home are not generating more than just a handful or two of food waste every day at home. So you can do that in the buckets at home. You can have a tiny little pallet corral in the backyard. If you don't want to use pallets, you can go to Jennifer at the landfill and get a really cheap, that's very affordable. I didn't mean to say it's cheap, it's inexpensive. It's affordable. It's a black bin that you can do this same thing in. I love the pallets because they're free. All the stuff I'm doing here, you guys, is free. If you ask politely at a store, they'll give you these pallets. If you ask politely a produce manager at a grocery store, they'll collect all this stuff for you, and you can take it home and make more compost at home. There's all kinds of shredded newspaper laying all over the place. All kinds of leaves in the fall that we can, instead of shipping them up and sending them out to the landfill, maybe we can hang on to a few bags at home, put them in the backyard, and pull from them throughout the year so we can make compost at home. So in answer to your question, I really think that no matter what scale you're at, in or outside, I've got inside stuff, outside stuff, small, large. It's really easy. The last thing I can't wait to bring to your schools that I want to just give you a little taste of before we stop here is something. How many of you guys have heard of aquaponics? Have you ever heard of this? Have you? Have you ever seen it in action? Like what's happening? So as much as I love to talk about soil, I want you guys to also understand that there are ways to grow this tomato without soil. And it's called aquaponics. And what it involves is having all of the nutrients that these roots need coming from the water that is cycled from the bottom of a fish tank. So imagine that this bucket was full of fish. And imagine I had a tray up here with a pump that this was sitting in a tray, okay, in water, and all the fish waste that's down here gets pumped up where I'm feeding the fish, okay, and the fish waste, look, poop, you guys, is not an evil word, okay? I want you to get past giggling about poop because it's all about recycling all of this. You know what I'm saying, you guys? You're recycling food here. You're taking old food that everyone thinks is garbage and stinky, and it's becoming the ingredients for new food. And so, in and out. The microbes are pooping, the worms are pooping, the fish is pooping. It all comes back up into this tray, and all the roots get everything they need to grow by just that cycling of nutrients from the tray. And I get to take this, I found a demo kit that I get to take the classes next semester. That's so cool. So I want to thank you guys so much for being such amazing, good listeners. And let's come on up and take a peek at these red wigglers. I'm going to get my old man glasses on here. Let's go deep. Oh, I just hit the mother lode. There they are. There's an old carrot in there. But anyway, these guys are called Acenia fotida. They're little tiny red worms. They don't get much bigger than that. They, if you look really close at their body, you can actually see little dots of food moving through their body. That part right there that's arching its head, that is the head. So it just keeps scavenging for food. And the babies are so tiny that when they're first born, I can barely even, they're about as tiny as those seeds that I was telling you about. They're just little white specks. But these also start reproducing really quickly. There's a bump. I'll try to find one I'll show you that's got, every worm has this section of its body that's a little thicker than the rest. These are all real babies. Let me try to find an adult. But when they rub up against each other, they will exchange information with those bumps, and that's when they get their reproduction going. But like I say, it's just really easy. You just put them in the bucket, and all of this black organic matter is what they're creating for the nutrients. And they will eat twice their body weight in one day. They just munch, munch, munch. And it sounds like a really, really maybe complicated thing, but like I say, it's not rocket science. It's just, you just go ahead and give them what they need to eat and let them do their thing, and they produce nature's perfect, balanced, free fertilizer. Very simple. And if you guys have never looked under a microscope, like I say, I don't have a really powerful one here, and plus the light is such that we don't have a lot of light here, but when the light hits this mirror, it bounces up in here. And if you look down, let's see if you can move. Let's put this right here. Just want you to be able to take a peek at, something freed up just now. If you look under there right now, you're going to see not just black. You're going to see all kinds of different colors. You're going to see all kinds of depth. It goes up and down like you're looking at an aerial photo of the moon. And so I encourage you at school to try to find a really amazing microscope and take a peek at soil close up, roots close up, and really honor that living world that's under there. And like I said, if you look at the jar of soil, you're going to see these little sand particles on the bottom, the clay layers on the top, and that middle part we talked all hour about, that organic matter. That's what we're making when we're making compost.
Can we look in the microscope?
Sure, go ahead, come on around. You can't block the light from here, so if you come around back right here, you can. Actually, I'm wondering if trying to find a way. Come on around, you guys, this way. Come around back here. You can walk. Go ahead. Yeah, I can tell that there's light right here that if you guys stay on this side, there's light coming through here that's better. So go ahead, Jed, just take a peek. Don't touch the dials, but go ahead and just squint one eye and look down on there, and you'll see just all that different variation in size. You'll see little tiny specks of sand in different colors. I'll tell you too, while you guys are waiting in line, in this little container right here, I have what I talked about with it that's called a cover crop. These are little pea seeds and oat seeds. So at the end of the garden time, I spread these in the garden in October or November, and these will sprout. They'll germinate, come up, and then they'll die back at frost, but they've done their job. They've produced organic matter that then I'm going to reincorporate in the spring that will decompose and provide available nutrients for the next cycle in the spring. But that's winter kill cover crop. You can also get a regenerative cover crop, which is what I did downtown at the downtown garden, like with ryegrass, where I put that down in November. It sprouted, died back at frost, and then regenerated, came back in the spring, and then like a few weeks before we started to put the garden in, that's when I chopped that down, let it decompose. Again, it's all about that what happens when that organic matter is decomposing. And so if it's a cover crop or composting, it's still doing the same function. So soil should never be uncovered, you guys. Soil, when soil is uncovered, it runs off and erodes. And we still, in our conventional row crop system, we still have 10 tons per acre that just run off, and we lose it. And once it's gone, it's gone. We got to hang on to this finite resource on this planet and build it. And really, really, look at the science and say, am I hurting it or am I helping it? And be humble enough to admit when we're wrong and learn from our mistakes. And so if you guys ever want to get a hold of me for any school stuff, just get a hold of me at New Pioneer or through Erica and Sarah. And I would love to help you with your school gardens, your composting, the classes. I have 5 classes. Some of you guys have already had some of mine. The gardening, the local foods, soil, compost, and life skills. Because remember, it's not just about gardening, you guys. It's about balance, respect, patience, nurturance, healthy choices, trust, listening, resilience. I mean, you learn these things with me when you're in the garden. And so it's way beyond just food, you guys. So thank you once again for spending some time with me. I really appreciate it. Oh, I forgot. Can I say one more thing, please? I forgot. I dedicate all my classes to my grandma. And I can't believe I didn't say this. Sorry, Grandma. My grandmother Helen, my mom's mom, taught me a lot of this stuff. I inherited this. Oh my God, I forgot. She died when I was your age, you guys. I'm sorry. I just didn't think about that till now. When you see your grandma, if you've got your grandma, please hug her. Tell her you love her. Grandma gave me this tool. It's called a hand plow. They don't even make these anymore. And the reason I bring it is not just to honor Grandma, but to show you that when you look at tools, you can get inspired when you look at nature. I see a talon on a hawk here. I also see the antler on a buck. And I found this in a Native American. I found a tool like this in a Native American museum where they actually would take years ago. In fact, there probably still are tribes all over the world that just take found objects and get inspired and use them as tools. And you could put this on a stick and use this as a plow, like this, like this. So I just want you to be able to look at nature and learn from, all the life skills I was telling you about, you guys, you can learn from nature. All those things I told you. You can even look at something as simple as a helicopter seed and see that thing flying through the air, And I'll bet you anything. I mean, I go out and just stare at nature, and I can say, oh, I wonder if the guy who invented the helicopter or the fan blade saw this flying through the air and go, oh, what's the weight displacement and the air flow through this thing to determine, So I'm just saying, just pay attention to nature. She's the greatest teacher we have. So thank you very much. Sorry for getting all teary. Hello, my name is Scott Koepke, and I am the Education Outreach Coordinator at New Pioneer Food Co-op, where I run a garden education service for children called Soil Mates that does gardening, composting, and life skill education. And we're here today at the Coralville Public Library for the Dig Into Reading the program, and we are literally digging into the soil today with a class for 5th and 6th graders called Soil First, because everything I teach goes back to taking care of that first, and then we have the plants, and then we have the food, and then we're all here today. So we got to just spend some great time talking with everybody about taking care of the soil, what that means to both grow some food, and then if some food's left over, what we'll do to make more soil with that old food.